On Iron Test 79. Because yesterday we learned that if you have a ditch between two chatzeros and you fill it with dirt, so if you don't mavatal it, if it's just stam, it doesn't work. You have to be mavatal it. The Gemara says, Mantana Oyalois, who is the author of that Mishnah? Rabbi Yossi. And Rabbi Yossi, we heard just the opposite in the name of Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya, Rabbi Yossi Oimer, Teven, let's say you have a dead body in a house, and you fill the dead body with straw, so that the house is now completely filled. So the din is the tumas mace goes all the way up to Shamayim. So Tevin Veinosi Lefanos, so you have straw, and he makes no plans to remove it. Harehu Kistam Offer Ubatel. It's like regular dirt that we know that if you're going to put that by offer, we don't know whether a person's going to remove it or not. Because stamazoi with offer, you're going to be mavatal it. So we see clearly Rabbi Yossi holds that you don't need to be actual mavatal dirt. Even stam is considered mavatal. And offer v'asil fanoiser. Let's say you filled your house with dirt and you announce that you're going to remove it. Hareu kistam tevin v'loy batal. So, anyways, we see from this brisa that Rabbi Yossi holds that if you fill a ditch with dirt, it's going to be a mavatal whether you say it or not. Amravasi Mantana Eruvin Rabbi Yossi. The Mishnah of Oyalois is somebody else, but our Mishnah is Rabbi Yossi, which says that offer is mavatal no matter what. Rav Huna Breder Vishua Omar, that the stira that you just raised between the Mishnah and the Baraisa is not a stira. Tuma Shabbos Karamis. You ask me a question between Dinei Tum and Dinei Shabbos. Hanachis or Shabbos Dafilu Arnekinami Mavatil Inish. By Shabbos, it's Muktzah. A person that has a person in his house, he's also going to be Mavatil at that day. He's not going to touch it. Dirt's the same thing because it's Muktzah. So you can't. It's not the same dinim of Tumah regarding whether you're going to leave something there or not. And Rav Ashi shows another another difference between the Bryce and the Mishnah, that Bayis Achritz Karamis. You ask me a kasha from bias to a ditch? Bishmachritz limitai mikoi. A ditch, the whole point of a ditch is to fill it. And therefore the chazaka is, if you fill something, we know it's meant to be left there, no matter what he says. Bias limit mikoi, but you don't fill a house with the idea that it's going to leave it there. Usually when you fill a house with something, it's just temporary for storage, but later on you're going to remove it. So you can't. There's no deduction that you can make on a case from bias to a ditch because the whole thing is different. Okay. Then we said you have a ditch that separates two chatzeros. The Mishnah said nosel of neser sheroicha barba. If you put a board 4 tefach across. So it's a Pesach, and now you can make an Erev between the two Chatzeros. Amar Rava, lo yisharu shenosel l'rochbo. That's if you placed it across the width of the ditch. Aval la'orko. But let's say you laid it parallel to the ditch, and it's stuck into the ditch a little bit, like you placed pegs into the ditch, and you laid the sort of in parallel in the putting the board down the length of the ditch. Here. Mm-hmm. You can see the difference between a board, the width and the length. It doesn't need to be a certain shear because you've in that area, you've reduced the width of the ditch to less than 4, then you can just step over it. So even if the board is the width of a finger, says Rashi, it's mamayit the roichav. And therefore, you'd be able to make an eruv between the two chatzeros, even with just a small, thin board. Two balconies. So there's machlokas rishonim. Rashi learns that the balconies are on the same side of the Rishus Harabim. According to other rishonim, it's across the Rishus Harabim. And you can, so on Rava Haidamar Zu Keneged Zu in. So they have to be sort of parallel, so you could place a board between them. But Zu Shalo Keneged Zu Lo. But if they're not sort of in line, and you can't easily place a board between them, so therefore it doesn't connect the two areas. When we discounted a case where one balcony is higher than the other, that's only if the distance between them is more than 3 tfachim. It's considered like lavud, right? Our old friend lavud. So it sort of connects them, and they're like one kind of crooked balcony, and of course it would be considered one rishus. Mishnah. Mat bein shebein shtei chatzeros. You have a haystack as opposed to a wall between two chatzeros. Gavoa asor tfachim, 10 tfachim high. So it serves as a wall in essence, and therefore Marvin Shnai Marvin Echad. Each chutzner makes its own eruv. They can't make a joint eruv because they're not connected. And Elu Machilin Mikan ve'Elu Machilin Mikan. Each can bring their animals to the haystack on their respective side of the chutzner. They can eat from the haystack. We're not concerned that maybe they're going to reduce the size of the haystack to be less than 10, because they don't eat that much. Now, if, of course, the haystack is less than 10 prior to Shabbos, so Marvin Echad ve Marvin Shnai. So then you don't have a good division between the two chatzeros, so they cannot make their individual eruv, but they can make one combined eruv because they're connected. You cannot, we said you can bring your animal to the haystack to eat, but you can't with your hands fill up a pail and feed the animal. Because there you might come to make the height of the haystack less than 10. And then it'll be a problem. It'll be you'll be a metaltel from a chutzner that doesn't have a good aim. So that if you can't use it be a diet, l'uk mishori, how then can you bring your animal to eat there? For example, a person is in his backyard with his animal. He can sort of direct his animal to eat grass. However, but he can't have him stand in front of something that's muktzah b'Shabbos. Well, this haystack is also muktzah. It's been designated for this purpose. How can he allow him to do that? So more says he doesn't lead him there. He sort of stands in front of the animal, preventing the animal to go to a certain direction. Memela, the animal's going to eat from the haystack. Freit the Gemara, we said you shouldn't put straw into a pail. So what, you're not allowed to put straw into a pail? You have 2 houses that open up into a chutzner, and there's a third house in the middle, which is like a straw house. Now this house or hut that you fill with straw, serves as a division between the two chatzeros. Therefore, ma'arvin shnai and ma'arvin echad. You have like a wall, so each chatzer can make their own ev, but they can't make a joint ev. And however, here it says zen noisen letoch kuposu v'yachal, the zen noisen kuposu v'yachal. Yet here they're allowed to fill up a pail and feed their animal. However, nismait atev mazor tvachim shnei masurim. Now, once there's no more separation between the two chatzeros, so then, in essence, both chatzeros open up to each other, so they're going to asr on each other. So ketzadu osa. So there's a way that at least one of them could use their chatzer. One guy noel his base, so locks his house. Umevatel, so he can't carry anything from his house into the chatzer. Umevatel shushuso. He is mevatel his reshus in the chotzer to the other guy. So who asr v'chaveru mutter? It's a way to allow the other guy to use it, and at least one of the two can use it. Let's say you have a big ditch between two cities within the 2,000 amet tchum. I mean, it's right at the edge of the 2,000 amet tchum, and you fill it up with straw. So the din is each city can use that big ditch of straw. We're not worried that they're going to sort of take from the guy's other side. They're going to take it from the side that's on their side. And that we're not choishesh that they're going to be dragged to go outside the tchum. So the point of this baraisa is, Ketoni mias, whatever you want to say, comes out, you told me above that when you have a haystack between chatzeros, you're not allowed to fill the haystack into a pail. But here with this house dividing the two chatzeros that's filled with straw, you're allowed to do it. Why is there a difference? Amri, bayis, given the ikamechitzos for tikra. So the bayis has a roof. It may not have walls, this shed or hut. Now, when you fill it with straw, so it's filled. Now, as you use it, you're going to see space that's created between the ceiling and the hay. So, ki mifchas min krilei milsa, as it gets maybe to closer to 10 tefach, where it's going to be a problem, you're going to identify it, and therefore, we're not worried that in that situation it's going to become less than 10 tefach. But hacha, when you just have a freestanding haystack that above it is just the open sky, and you start filling a pail from that haystack, lo min krilei milsa, you're not going to see clearly that you're approaching the sort of the fail-safe of 10 tefa. So the Mishnah said that if you have a haystack and you reduce the height of the haystack to less than 10 tefachim, then we don't have a good division between the two chatzeros. So they're open to each other. So both cannot be mishtamesh with the eruv and its room. Now, ha'asara shari. But if it's 10, it's permitted. Afagav de midlay tikra tuva. Now, this was the case of the house or the hut or the shed in between. So we say as long as even there's a lot of space between the top of the straw and the ceiling, it's okay. So what does this mean? Shmami no. We can learn from here that mechitzos she'ein magias latikra, these quote unquote mechitzos that don't reach the ceiling, shman mechitzos. Is that so? This is a kasha on what we learn on Ayin Beis. Which it seems to imply that walls that don't reach the tikra are not good mechitzos. Amar Abaya, hacha b'bayis shloisha aser chaser mashu askina. We're talking about that the roof is 12.9 tefach, and the teven is asar, right? So since you have lavud, anything less than 3 tefachim is lavud, it's as if you filled the house. But if the space was greater than 3 tefach, it would not. Then it would be a problem. Rav Huna bar Rav Yeshua amar afilu tema b'bayis asara v'teven shivu mashu. So it would also work if the shed was 10 tefachim high and the straw was 7.1. So again, you're within lavud, and it's as if you have a 10 tefach mechitza. Our old friend lavud. So Bishlam al-Abaya, who said that the straw is 10 and the roof is 12.9, well, the Mishnah very clearly said that the height of the straw is asara. El Rav Huna bar Rav Yeshua, my asara, means bitoras asara. That means the din of asara. That means once you have asara, it's got a din mechitza. So 7.1 with the din of lavud to the ceiling of 10 is mitoras asara. So it's not a kash on either of them. Then we said if it's less than 10 tefach, and each side had made their own independent Eruvin, now l'chora it's less than 10. We say both are prohibited. Now the Gemara assumes that this occurred on Shabbos. You're not born by Shabbos Asurim. So, for example, you make an Eruv, and all of a sudden on Shabbos new people come. So, are we learning from there that those new people ruin the Eruv no matter what? And it's the same thing here, that if the thing got ruined, on Shabbos, see, there is a concept, hoil v'hutra hutra. L'chora, once the Eruv was effective at the start of Ben Hashmoshes, so it should be effective throughout Shabbos. So are we saying here that if it's minimized during Shabbos, are we learning here from that the Yor Naboim b'Shabbos Asurim? So the says no. Dilma, you might ask what we're talking about, that the height of the straw wall got lessened Me'erev Shabbos. So when you started, you didn't have the proper shear. So Ketzad Oisanel is based on Vatal Rishuso. So the Mishnah said that what happens if it becomes less than 10? So they gave us an 8. So the guy locks up his house, is Vatal Rishus. So Tarti, why do I need to do both? So Hachi Kamar. You don't have to do both. Oh, Noel, as Beso. Oh, Mavatal's Rishuso. He doesn't have to do both. By saying Olam Tarti, you have to do both. Keep the Dash Bay, since he's used to using this area, Osila Tuktula, he'll still come to use it. So now that he has 2 things that are preventing him from using it, he'll remember. And we said that if you lock up your house and you're Mavatli Rishus, he remains Osir V'chaver Mutter. Pshita, of course, he's not into it. It's only going to be the other guy who can use it. Because maybe the other guy who now can use it, maybe he can get his kalim from the chatzar, and he can turn around and be mavatal back to the other guy. So that doesn't work. No. Once the bittul was done, he can't turn around and play ping pong with it. We said the same thing, that if you have a big area at the end of 2,000 amas of this city, the end of 2,000 amas in this city, and it's within the last 50 amas of this city, and this is within the last 50. It's a 100 amma wide ditch. 50 amas of the ditch belongs to this city. 50 amas of the ditch belongs to this city. And there's a whole bunch of straw there. The din is both cities can use the straw that abuts their city. How come we're not worried that city A is going to go use the straw that's close to city B? We're not worried. So the Gemara says, Pshita, why should we be worried? Why should we be worried? Why should the Tchum be different than Chatzeros? We see by Chatzeros we're not worried. Because Lotzrich Rabbi Kiva Domer Tchum in Doraisa. Because maybe, according to Rabbi Kiva, who holds that the din of Tchum is Doraisa, Mao the same leagues Ridum Yossi Lech Lufi, maybe we should be concerned, and we shouldn't allow either city to go into the ditch and use the straw, because they're going to use the other city's straw. Kamash Malon, that we're not goyzer even according to Rabbi Akiva. Is Johnny not in town?
I don't know, but I think he's out of town.
He's in Scottsdale. Yeah, he went to Scottsdale.
Okay. Mishnah. Kate said Mishtatin b'mavui. So if you have multiple chatzeros opening up into a mavui. So there's something called shituf mavuos, that it's like an eruv between chatzeros, but all the chatzeros that opened up into a mavui can carry from their chatzer into the mavui based on this shituf mavuos. So the Mishnah is going to describe how we do it. A person has a barrel of food somewhere in the mavui, belongs to him. So he's mezake it for all the bnei mavui. He like gives it to them. Those who want to use it can use it. Now he cannot do it himself. He has to do it al yedei shaliach, who is an independent person from him. Therefore, mezake lehen al yedei bno vito agdolim. He can tell his adult children to be mezake for the people in the mavui. Or ayidei avdo v'shivchoso ha'ivrim, right? An eved ivri or a shif amo ha'ivriya. So they're regular independent people. He doesn't have a kinyan aguf on them. Therefore, he can use them. Or ayidei ishto, even his wife he can use. However, he can't use eina mezake lo ayidei bno vito ktanim, because they can't make a kinyan. V'lo ayidei avdo v'shivchoso ha'knanim, because they belong to him, and because their rishus is, their yad is like his yad. And therefore, this works through zikui al yidei acher, and they're not considered an acher. Now, when you do this thing with the shaliach, you're mezake it for the other people. You have to lift, like when we give Rabbi Krause a handkerchief when we make, or a pen, he lifts the pen, right? He does a kinyan sudar. So here as well, he has to be koine it by lifting it from the karka tefach. The elders of Pumbedisa said the following halachas. Chadaha. One is this din, that tzarich lagbiyam and akarka tefa. Idich hamekadesh. Somebody makes kiddush on Shabbos with wine. Im tomelo lukmav yotza. He has to taste at least a cheekful after he makes a bracha. Then he's yoytze choivas kiddush. V'im lav lo yotza. If he doesn't taste a mole ligmav, he's not yotze. A mole ligmav is rov revius. Rov of a revius is mole ligmav. Rav Chaviva Anami, right? A revius is like 3.3 ounces. Remember, there's a machlokes, Chazon Ish, Rav Moshe. It's about 3.3 ounces. So it's a rove of 3.3, which would be 50% of that. Mikra din. There's another halacha that the elders of Pumbedisa said, the Amar Rav Yidam Shmuel, Oisin Medur L'chaya b'Shabbos. A woman who's giving birth on Shabbos, you're allowed to light a fire for her. She is apparently susceptible to cold. So if she says she's cold, you can light a fire for her. So the Gemara's Havamina here is Svar Minei L'chaya in L'chola Lo. We're talking about a chola sheyesh bo sakana. So what do you mean a chola lo? I mean, usually you can do anything also for chola sheyesh bo sakana. And bimosak shamim in, only in the winter time, bimosak hamalo. However, itmar amrav tia baravin amar shmuel hikis dam v'nitztanin. Person did bloodletting, and he had like a chill. Oisin lo medur v'Shabbos. So you're allowed to make it, and not only that, because he's a choila. So you see a choila who says he's cold, You make a medura for him. I feel a bit kufas tamas, even in the summertime. Amra meimar hanami sami tu pudisam rinu diitmar. Ezehu ashera stam. How do you know that you're dealing with an ashera tree? We don't see people worshiping it. However, Amarav Kosha Kumarim Shomim Moisa. You see a bunch of priests watching it, guarding it. And you know that it's an ashera tree. Okay? So tomorrow,